Hello, and welcome to another episode of TacoBytes. We are just having to move real quick as the rain is coming in, and we are on the steps of the courthouse, so give us 1 second. And we relocate, and we are coming to you live. That's the one thing about coming to you live. You never know what's going to happen. We hope everyone has been having a great day. As you can tell, we were not able to wait to get our hands on our Cigar Day challenge. Huge shout out to the Cigar Crypto Club. As we go live with Twitter, we will restart, and we will shout out to everyone that's joining us. Thank you so much. Hello, and welcome to another episode of TacoBytes, your daily bite of Degen, episode number 424.2, end of day live at SBF trial, day number 9. We covered everything this afternoon that Nishad Singh sort of went over, and everything continued again today at 2:10. And the prosecution opened up with futures and trying to understand what futures trading is, long, shorts. They did a very roughshod job of doing that. As you know, that we put in our own sets of shorts and longs on all sorts of things all the time. One of the things that they then went into was, what they were laying out was the groundwork of the code that FTX was sort of built on, and that was within liquidations and factors within that matter. And so what happens normally with the liquidation, if you have margins not set, or you have cross liquidity trading going on, or you have auto margin, it will pull from your bank until you are liquidated, and it will pull those prices out depending on what type of leverage you are using. One of the features, though, is that if something significantly price dropped, you could get over liquidated, meaning that if you only had $1,000 or $100 in your account, and there was a flash drop, you could drop to minus $120, and so you would be in the whole $20 and not have any money, but your account would be negative 20. What they were sort of pointing out was that the code actually FTX's code had no feature to claw back that $20 or put you into a negative balance. I'm assuming it would put you into a negative balance, but that there was no way for them to claw that back specifically. Why they sort of went into that, I'm not 100% sure, because what I think they were really showing was how flawed some of the code was off chain. One of the things that they then went into was that Rashad sort of went into creating his own script using Pinecone to figure out the line of credit that Alameda had, actually, that it was pulling from, because one of the big things that they were showing was that it had $65 billion in its line of credit, and it was currently $10 billion short. So from August 31st to September 2nd, he did a collab. So what their collateral was and what their position was, plus the line of credit needed to show how much line of credit was being used. And from that aspect, it was sort of seeing what was going on there. And we may have to actually move real quick. Give us just a second. Do we have to move? Do you need us to move too? It started raining, yeah. Okay. So we have to move because we moved under out of the rain. So we're going to move back into the rain and finish this transmission. Hey, no, it's a courthouse. We're live. Come with us on this adventure. All right. We are back. And actually, that was one of the shortest rains I have seen in New York in a while. So as we continue this, what Rashad was able to find out, Rashad was able to find out was that Alameda actually had a $65 billion line of credit that it could pull against within Alameda's, Alameda had within FTX. And this was that Rashad had found out by just running a simple script check. And he only did it against one of their main accounts, didn't pull into anything else. So once that was done, and he did this on his own accord, once he'd done this, and he talked to Sam about it, Sam asked if Nishad could transfer his, Sam's and Gary's serum over into Alameda, so that it would show that there was a larger amount of collateral on Alameda's books. And the reason to do this is because they were going up for CFTC auditing for futures trading of FTX. And so he did not do this as it would fool us regulation, and felt bad, was what he ended up saying. But he ended up doing a bunch of other things that we'll get into. So one of the things with Alameda having $65 billion of LOC, the next highest line of credit was with Genesis having $150 million LOC. Multiple objections today from the defense, usually around form and structure. Once an Excel sheet came out, they were doing a lot of everything that the prosecution is showcasing is Microsoft Excel, and they're separating that from Google Docs a lot as well. And so they're having to say, is this a form that you recognize? This is the Google Docs, Excel version of the Google Docs form. And so when he saw one of the forms, he was like, prosecution worked really hard to help identify who created this balance sheet. And Rashad was able to say that, he could tell it was Sam based on Sam's style that he used within his spreadsheets that were, lazy, no color coding, rarely had any caps, and then the style formatting of numbers, and then the data pulled out, to the side of it, so you wouldn't have to necessarily scroll within it, and it could be a one pager. And so one of the big things then that Sam, Gary, and Rashad did is, after Rashad started to sort of question about Alameda and Alameda's practices, Sam, Gary Wong, and Rashad were on a document together judging closing Alameda. And this document was, we came, we saw, we researched. And so Rashad laid out a couple different ideas they would have to take to close out, not necessarily close Alameda, but remove Alameda from FTX, as that was what Rashad felt was the biggest downfall to FTX and the only thing that was keeping it from succeeding. And that was like closing illiquid markets, closing Alameda's OTC deals accounts, and then closing all of their other accounts as well. And so we saw that piece go. And then one of the things that was asked and objected to was, did Alameda use allow neg? The allow neg was the negative balance, was for the flag that they had specialized to their account was, could they share, did Alameda use allow negative to do market making? and that was objected to. And then Rashad asked Sam if he could share with Caroline this. We researched document and outline pieces. Sam responded, not crazy, meaning he wasn't, the way Rashad explained it was that Sam was not happy about it, but not against it. And so that's when he then brought Caroline into the conversation, Rashad, and looked at closing down Alameda. Caroline's response was, that's impossible. For closing those accounts and everything like that. And I think that was based off of how much debt was owed to FTX customers that, then they started to go back more into what signal groups they were in together, naming them, organization group was like Gary, SPF, Caroline, and Nishad. That's when Rashad found out that Alameda was 13 billion in the hole, and so as Rashad doesn't have a lot of, as he said, accounting experiences. He didn't really say, in the black, in the red, positive balances or anything. He was like in the hole, and that hole, 13 billion in the hole, was from FTX customer funds. And so when he brought this to Sam, about the 13 billion, he got an unsurprised and false response, is what he responded as. Didn't really give what the response was, as that got sort of no follow-up questions were asked on that. One of the things that he really then got a chance to talk to Sam about, that once Sam got back from Saudi Arabia, or the UAE, from investor meetings in Saudi Arabia, he had a 1 to 1.5 hour meeting with Sam on the balcony of their penthouse in the Bahamas. And so he got to sort of lay out that Caroline really freaked out over the NAV issue, and the deficit of customer funds, and so was he. And then he was right that they were a little short of Sam responded right that we are a little short of deliverables, and Shad asked, how much can we deliver? Sam followed up with, that is the wrong question. So where then Rashad responded with, Jesus effing Christ. And so he started to talk about how this was going to be really detrimental to his work, and how much time it's going to take out of him doing actually anything else. Sam then responded that it took up 5 to 10% of his time as well, based over either the last year, meaning because this was in September of 2022, so either Rashad didn't know if it was 2022 that he was talking about, so 9 months, or an entire year, 12 months that he had been talking about. And so that was one of the big questions that he had on that. And then, where is that? So yeah, Nishad then sort of had further conversations with Sam, and Nishad sort of ended up coming out of it with like not too worried, and solutions to curb spending was what Nishad was really after. And even though he was saying he felt betrayed, and that FTX was a force for good, which turned out evil. And he then actually sort of felt very altruistic in that or not altruistic, but very savior-ish, in my opinion. He felt he did not quit because he felt that him quitting either took him out from being the solution or being the issue that caused the full collapse of FTX. And so he decided to keep on doing and digging his own grave, I guess. Once then, Sam and them started talking about raising money. And once again, the prosecution is jumping all around timeline-wise, um, pulling a bunch of different things, not really well together. And so he then went off on asking about Rumik and Anthony Scaramucci. Anthony Scaramucci was the policy campaign advisor for Trump, which he now runs his own um, venture capital firm called Skybridge Capital. And so Rumik, Anthony, and um, Sam went to Dubai to raise funds. And he this was a very interesting time because there was a lot of tales around the court during this. So Nishad once again thought he might quit, and he remembers Sam leaning on the fridge and saying that from the outcome of Dubai, that they could bring down that $13 billion hole to about $5 billion. So that was a big thing that Nishad was sort of apprehensively excited about, and I think kept him going. And so one of the things that he then was able to get into was how he knew that SPF was upset, and he was sort of talking about the telltale signs of Sam. Hand and finger grinding, teeth grinding, eyes closing, different ways that, you can sort of see that one's frustrated. By my jaw chattering, can you tell that it is actually a little windy and cold out here in New York today? And so then this was all set. And then he started to see new expenses around September 22nd that made him not really think that this was going on, or that the plan was being kept to on capping spending. At this time, this is when I was starting to watch Sam himself, because he had a longtime friend, childhood friend, almost talking about him and talking about like his own tells. And whenever anyone hears about their involuntary movements, it always gets to them, and this was no different. You could see Sam clearly agitated in his seat, and sort of bouncing, just eyes, really stuck on Nishad, and we could see how that happened. One of the things that then jumped to was a lot of the spending side of things and bad spends that Nishad felt was being good, and how he tried to bring that to Sam's attention. From that, he could see, Sam asked him to point out certain things that were bad spends. Sam then agreed on those. They didn't point to what these items were. Sam agreed on these bad spends, but associated the associated cost was 70% of the total cost, just to not do those things and get out of them. And so they got themselves into a lot of different bad contracts, in my opinion, if that was the case. And so then be based on some of the things that had come out of Dubai was a meeting with the founders and creators of Telegram, as they felt that FTX could become the payment processor, the crypto payment processor within Telegram. And so that was going to be another $120 million investment deal from FTX. So right as, right as, what's the word I'm thinking of here? Nishad was asking for spending to be cut to make him more happy with things. We saw, a big spike in what those spending things were happening, and was just sort of spending funds. The whole Telegram thing deal, Caroline and Nishad were against. Sam and Rumik were for it. Hold on just a minute. We got to relight. Never turned down a good Cuban. So from that, we saw that deal sort of went to happen around September 6th of 2022. And then after promises were made to Nishad that spending was going to, they had large investments, and this was around September 2nd, so that spending was going to be cut down. Then large investments were made on September 6th, as well as a huge investment to Skybridge Capital, Anthony Scaramucci's investment firm in the UAE, on September 7th. This is when the prosecution then jumped over to Rashad's, what he had done wrong with venture capital campaign finance loans, as he was, that was one of the things that he had pled guilty to. And so from that, we saw, a lot of campaign payments were ran through him, and then VC venture capital firm investments were not ran through him directly, but paper-wise were ran through him. Paper loans, so basically on paper, loaned to him that he would then give back to FTX to make investments. Deposits from Alameda, donations processing. This is actually where, with the donation sides of things and talking about the campaign payments, this is where Sam's younger brother, Gabe, came into the question conversation a lot. Ryan Salam and Gabe Bakeman, would send money for political donations directly from Nishad's bank account. So his bank account was sort of an open bank account that Ryan had access to trigger wires that Nishad would then have to approve in his email multiple times, or because he wouldn't do them a lot. And so Ryan ran the OTC side of things, and then as well as a few other things for FTX. But this all went through Nishad's personal bank account with Prime Trust and Wells Fargo. Gap, which we talked about last week, was actually ran by Gabe. And that is the Guardians Against Pandemic super PAC that was giving donations to either far left, and center left organizations. And we'll talk about those in just a moment, because this was covered a lot by prosecution. And so Gap was sort of ran by Gabe and Keenan Lance, where Keenan or Gabe would give Nishad instructions via Signal of who to send, within the Democratic Party. Some of the biggest donations were to Act Blue, as well as the DNC of Delaware. So the Democratic Party of Delaware, it looks like $120,000 total, through $20,000 per donation, 6 donations total to the DNC of Delaware. Through that, so how this would go is Alameda would send it to Nishad's bank account, and then Nishad would then either credit card, check, or PayPal to these Democratic primary runners, or just political campaigns. And so then the other thing that Ryan Salam also set up was the same thing for SBF. So Ryan could trigger donations to political organizations from Sam's Prime Trust bank account. This is where something really funny happened. So Gabe, Nishad then had Gabe, talked about how Gabe, who was running Gap, had one of his assistants fly from, I'm assuming, New York to the Bahamas with a bunch of Nishad's blank Wells Fargo checks. So I don't know if they had the checks made or what, And then they didn't talk about how many checks there was, but we did see the Excel spreadsheet, and you should see that later on tonight by some of the reporters that have bought those exhibits and will have those out. But the reason why they had him sign a bunch of Wells Fargo checks is because the Prime Trust was coming under scrutiny, as well as his credit card was coming under scrutiny, and he was even having issues making PayPal accounts. So his Wells Fargo checks weren't having any issues being deposited into ActBlue or the DNC of Delaware or a couple others, and so one of the things that happened here, and what he was sort of saying, it was an advantageous optics of having it come from him going to someone else, knowing that it was sort of coming from someone else, so it was being money was being routed through him from someone else. And one of the, I have no understandings with this, but one of the conversations that they had was with Michael Sadowski, and Michael was having him make donations to the LGBTQ Victory Fund, and this is where things were a little bit more shady sounding. Obviously, for LGBTQIA organizations, but the LGBTQ Victory Fund, what Nishad was said was the outcome of his donation was unrelated to the LGBTQ community, and so like his donations there were not actually meant for them, or that fund is not what it says it is. It just has a name to associate with, and so we know nothing about this. We haven't done any research on that. We ask that you do that. And we are sure that someone smarter than us will be getting that done as well. So he was basically a name to be used. And after a while, he went to go find other employees at FTX whose names could be used to have this done as well, either because he was getting too bored with it, didn't like it anymore, or felt, but he wanted to sort of bring someone else down, I guess. One of the things then that Sam asked was a form to be made of who was giving donations to who where. And that form had Sam, FTX US, Nishad, Caroline, and Ryan Salam on it. And so I saw just on Nishad's, over 20 to 30 different organizations that he donated to, I think. No, let me say 20. I know the form went deeper, but I couldn't see more than that. And there was a lot more to the math on the side than what was just showing. So I'm making an assumption there, and that is wrong. So there was over 20 donations from Nishad to different Democratic political campaigns and super PACs. And then this is where, he pled guilty to campaign finance laws, straw donor, securities fraud, money laundering, and defrauding customers and investors. He's facing total 75 years max. He is hoping for no jail time. So one of the things that, and remember that Nishad did not start seeing the FBI until November 20th of 2022, and he's met with the FBI over 20 times since then. That is usually done at the end of questioning, but the prosecution then had even more to cover. They went through sort of the securities fraud and what that was, and that was showcasing revenue that was higher than was true. And so how they went about doing that, as our current revenue was at the 950 to 960 million. They needed to get over that 1 billion mark. So what they ended up doing was they started charging for serum staking, 25% interest. But the Eco SRM serum was then backdated. So it was put in place, and we'll get to that. And this is something to where we could show that is definitely nothing was done on Shane, is because then all the timestamps for these charges were backdated to earlier in the year. And we went back and saw through these investor documents that showcase that as well. And oh man, it looks like we are having to take a break on this for a second. And so from there, that's where a lot of shadiness started to really show up, where Nishad started to alter timestamps within the database for things. Keep in mind what with this for later on that then shows up. So the reason why they started doing this is because FTX was having auditors going through everything as they were getting ready for CFTC exposure, and they were looking for FTX future shares. So they then pushed on some questions on this, and this is where the auditors were given technical explanations, and then Jayesh asked for Nishad if they needed, the auditors also wanted the staking TNS for auditors, which was signed by the Incentive Ecosystem Foundation. Don't know anything about that. Look into that. The form that they showcased, this meeting where the serum was sort of pushed, was done in December of 2021. The form backdating that showed sort of the backdated serum staking revenue was actually was dated January 2021. So they went back almost an entire year of backdated information. And this is what, like, I put a big old BC in like a Superman letters here to where, as you can see, if these timestamps were getting changed and backdated, blockchain would have been the solution for that. That is why keeping records on chain can save you, or yeah, I don't know. But so the purpose of it all was to actually remove their losses. And so they moved their losses from FTX to Alameda. And when they were starting talking about this, this is where they talked once again. And I really hate saying this, because when it was originally talked about, the way it was explained was as a mobile coin chain exploit. There's no exploit to mobile coin. There's no exploit to mobile coin itself. The exploit was done within FTX, within the margin system. And why this was done and why this was able to happen is some accounts randomly ended up getting these activated flag systems and special privileges that Alameda accounts had as well. And so what they were able to find was that the exploit that happened was that none of these accounts were getting liquidated, had the same rules as Alameda, and none of these accounts also could borrow with not infinite limits like Alameda. But what ended up happening is they would move MobileCoin onto FTX. FTX did not have a very large liquidity pool on it, and so then there was able to push the price action up from normally around $5 a token to over, I think it was like $60 a token. And then they were able to borrow against that mobile coin, Bitcoin, and move that Bitcoin off. And so they talked about a large number of accounts and added a ton of mob. They didn't talk about how many accounts, and they also did not talk about how much mob was moved on. I think I remember from something else hearing around $850 million. That was in some of Caroline Ellison's documents that was talked about earlier. But that was a combination of mob and BTMX. That were the two tokens that were used in this case here. And so this is what we saw a lot of exploit pieces that talked about here within the margin system, and how this rolls back to, because there was no clawback in the code, because these tokens were liquidated, they still hadn't transferred out the BTC, but there was no clawback, so they couldn't get those funds from elsewhere. So their own code sort of killed them. Their own special privileges allowed exploitation. Because it was internal code changing, I have a weird feeling that it might have been an inside job. It's just me. Just a random me thing right now that I'm coming up because I'm smoking a cigar on the steps of the Southern District of New York courthouse. And it's a little cold, and it's Tech Week here in New York. So yay, go Tech Week. But as we continue, Nishad and SBF went through and found that there was a number of accounts. And so that's when they started to really try to account and stop some of these losses. So then they went, one of the really funny things, whereas this entire time Nishad was saying that, some of these illegal activities that he was asked to do, he didn't actually want to do them, and so ended up not really following through with them. This is where he then did some of his own. Because he was sort of playing middleman for a lot of loans, which it looks like he was over $477 million of loans, whether they were real loans or paper loans, investment loans, or loans that he was told to take out, asked to take out instead of selling his FTT tokens, or borrowing against the liquidity of his equity stakes. He then asked Sam specifically and clearly if he could make some trades on paper within the FTX database that would make it look like he paid off $500 million of loans, even though his loan total was $477 million. Sam had asked if this was doable, type of thing, and so he was, can I trade? And what he asked was, trade what? And he was to do what? And Nishad responded back, make fictitious trades to pay loans, and that he could backdate them to dates when token prices were higher. SBF responded, I think that should be fine. And this was all done around November 6th. And so as things were starting to fall apart, this is, instead of trying to save the ship, it's how do I get myself out of this debt piece stuff here. So it was rather interesting here as he kept talking about how he felt bad about doing some of these things, but that, he sort of dug himself into them even more. As far as his deposition, and how he looked, I gotta say, I think he's probably, if I remember right, 26 to 28 years old. He did look like he was about 16 sitting on the stand, just from the way he sounded and way he was going out. He did start to talk about some of his mental health issues that he was having when everything was going down around November 7th through the 9th. And so this is something I always want to take a moment every time I hear this or I talk about this. If you're at any time having doubts or thoughts of harm or self-harm, please reach out to any of your local community support groups. If you don't know how to get a hold of your local community support group, please reach out to me and I will do everything I can to help you make those connections as well. Or if you just need an ear, I can be that for you as well. So then we went back to around November 6th and 7th, back in the Bahamas, where Nishad, SBF, Ryvek, Caroline, and a few others were back at the condo, Orchid 6, I'm not sure. I haven't heard the right term yet. But they were working on their versions of a tweet, which then they sort of posted out. And this was the November 7th tweet that went out at 7:38 a.m. November 7th, 2022, where Alameda was talking about how its funds are safe, customers' funds are safe, and Alameda doesn't have any special privileges, and FTX does not borrow against any user's funds. And so we then saw from that piece that where Nishad then said that while these conversations were going on, the two words that they were sort of bickering about was either well capitalized or solvent, and he actually said that what he declared was that he thinks that they should have halted withdrawals. No one really listened to him, and so that's when he sort of leaned over and he, as he said, bowed out of the conversation, and abstained from any piece on that. This is where things started to get long on the day. And the judge is really into, speaking his mind. When the prosecution started to talk about total amounts through spot margin, the defense objected, and the judge literally leaned back and whistled like, "Sheesh, long day. Let's keep going with it." And so, thanks to Cap for keeping the entertainment going. This is when we then started talking about the prosecution jumped again over to Dan Friedberg, who's the lead lawyer, as well as Joe Bankman. Nishad was talking to Sam, saying that Dan had reached out to him and was really pissed about everything that was going down on November 8th. Sam responded that Joe Bankman had told SBF the same. Sam then responded, for what it's worth, them being mad might be the best thing for them, and that might save them because they don't know. During this time, Nishad was talking about how he was feeling very self-harmish, and was sort of hoping that they would sell to Binance. This is where sort of came to a close. Very non-committal day from the prosecution. Defense, will take 4 to 5 hours tomorrow on Nishad, and hopefully there's some entertainment there. And when I say entertainment, I'm just life out of the defense or the prosecution. They are doing everything they can to put the jury to sleep, and just the only times not keep them asleep is when they're saying, what did you do wrong and who did you do it wrong with? The rest of the time it's just blah. And so, some of the things that were talked about, after the jury left and witnesses left, was the next up testifiers. Once the defense said that they're going to be taking 4 to 5 hours with Nishad. And then next up would be Richard Busick and Jamel Mendel. I know Busick is FBI agent that will be testifying probably really quickly on cell phone site tower stuff. And if I remember hearing right, Jamel is another FTX customer. The prosecution and defense then had a little bit of arguments. As the defense wanted to only have a half day tomorrow or recess or adjourn until Thursday, as their SBF is wanting an extra dose of Adderall during the day. And the extended release Adderall won't be available until Thursday because the court cannot give him a dose of Adderall during the day. And so the judge sort of said that he's been keeping his eye on Sam. He hasn't really seen any issue that makes him say why he should be taking it or not taking it. He also said that he is not a medical doctor, but that at the same time he hasn't seen any medical opinions stating that it should be given. This is where the prosecution then stated that the Bureau of Prisons stated that his dose could even be lower than it currently is right now. when the judge asked for documentation on it, the prosecution said that they will get it. Then the prosecution pushed forward that the current doctor that prescription that SBF has stated that the doctor has been testified against by witnesses of overprescribing and liberally giving medications, specifically Adderall, to people that do not need it. So that was a big call out without being a call out. And this then goes, back into mental health and stuff like that. And so if there's ever, medications are an important thing. If you are prescribed them, please take them as prescribed. There are a ton of mental health organizations out there that will help you if you are out of your medications. Most emergency rooms will give you a bridge if you have any documentation that you've been prescribed the medication within the last 60 days and you're out of your current dose and waiting for a new one. They will give you sometimes up to a 3 to 10 day bridge to, because mental health is a big thing. I think that that's going to be talked about a lot more, and that might be one of the key aims that the prosecution is going to be aiming for, is that a lot of people were damaged by FTX or by the trail that Sam sort of left in his wake, and we will see how that goes tomorrow. As always, I want to give a huge shout out to all of the amazing people that I get to spend in the courtroom with each day, and everyone from the Times Post, Axios, Blockworks, Decrypt, just to name a few. And it has been an honor being out here taking these notes and sort of recording this out. Please be mindful that there is a lot of false information going out right now about this trial. So please be careful with what you're reading. There is no off switch on Solana. There's actually multiple different bounties out there that if you can ever find an on-off switch, there is, public bounties of, I think, up to $1 million. So go work on your code skills and find that. But I don't think you'll find it. But so I hope that you all have a great day and great night. We will see you tomorrow at afternoon, lunchtime, hopefully giving you a great episode 425 midday review from the court. And we will see you then. And as always, we end every episode the same way, because why not? That's how we do this. So our words of wisdom are: a closed mouth cannot be fed, and you cannot feed a closed mouth, meaning if no one knows you're looking for opportunity cannot come a knocking. And if opportunity does come a knocking and no one answers, it's going to keep on walking. We hope everyone has a great day, great night. See you at NY Tech Week, and everywhere else you are. Please have a great night and time. And with that, we end with the greatest, worst knock-knock joke on the face of the planet, and that is always the same: knock, knock. Who's there?